Alright, so I've got a client with an issue on a 5-axis machine. And I think what his issue is the steps per for the B axis is not exactly set just right to where it rotates 360 degrees when you tell it to. So what I'm going to do here is I've screwed up. I'm going to work on the A axis because I don't have a 5-axis, and this motor is wrong for this machine. The center shaft is not long enough, so it's just bolted on there. But so I can't use this, so I'm going to use my A axis as this reference, and this works for X, Y, Z, A, and B, except in the A and the B it's set up more for angles, whereas X, Y, and Z are set up for linear movement, whether it be inches or millimeters. So what we're going to do is we're going to work with the A axis, and so we've got our A axis, and like I said, it could be the B axis, and I've already taped this one up, and this is not bolted down, so I can just rotate it by hand. But we are simply going to take a piece of tape, and I've staged this because I got to do it all one-handed, and on the edge of the tape you have nice crisp lines. Just rip a piece off and then rip it in half if you want to where we have this nice crisp line. This is stationary, this is what rotates. This is stationary, this is what rotates. And I know my client has got a vise up here, so that's why I'm working down here. And so we are just going to put this on as straight as possible. And if you'll notice, I have already got pieces of tape up here for this exact reason. So we get that on there, and we can't rotate the axis because this will just peel the tape off. That's where some sort of sharp implementation will come in, and I am just going to cut the tape right down that seam. And now what I am going to do is I'm going to come up here to Mach 3, and I'm going to zero my A axis. And earlier when I said I screwed up, what I meant to say was I screwed up my axis settings for this axis for this demonstration. So with that, I'm going to click down here at the MDI line, okay, and I am going to simply type G0 space A360. So I'm telling it to rotate the A axis 360 degrees, and the G0 is a rapid command. So if you were working on the X, Y, Z, you would, instead of the A, you would put which axis you want. So in my client's case, it will be G0 B 360. So now when I press enter, if everything is perfect, it should rotate, and this line should be perfectly straight just like it is now. So hopefully it doesn't peel my tape off. Alright, so there she goes. And while it's doing that, the reason why I have this tape here and on here as well, the yellow, is I work a lot out of my 4th axis. So I took the time to indicate my fixture plate in flat, then I just put a piece of tape here, so if I want to rotate my A axis to A0 to where my fixture is flat, I just rotate it till these two lines line up, and then 0 on the work coordinates. So the machine thinks it went 360 degrees, and if we look here, we can see that we were nowhere near it. We're way off. It did not rotate enough. Okay, so if it was to do something along that lines, then it rotated too far. So if we come up here and we go to, and I'm just going to tell this to go back to G0 A360, so we get our original start point, so it's just going to go back to where it stopped earlier. Alright, so now if we go up here to config and then go into motor tuning, we want to deal with our axis in question. So I'm going to use my A axis, and we have this steps per field down here. This is how many steps the machine has to move to get one native unit. Okay, so if we were in inches, it would be inches for X, Y, and Z. If our native unit was millimeters, it'd be how many steps does that motor have to take to move 1 millimeter. That's all this is. So the easy way that I tell people is if it didn't go far enough, then that number is too small. If it went too far, then that number is too big. So we're not going to change anything here yet. What I'm going to do is I am going to tell this to A0. Now I did not type the G0 because it knows its last feed rate command. So if we would have typed G1AF200, it would have done this exact thing at a 200 millimeters per minute feed rate. And then it remembers that until you tell it something else. So if I would have told it to A0, it would have done it at 200. So now I've got this back exactly where it was when we started. Nice straight line. So now we're going to go in and make a change. So I know that my A-axis steps per was too small because it did not rotate all the way around. So I am going to up that a little bit. Let's go 700. Yes, I'm doing trial and error right now. Okay, so now I'm going to click. Oh, one other thing I have to mention. In the motor tuning, anytime you make a change, you have to click the Save Axis Settings button before clicking OK. So now it made a change to the motor tuning on how many steps, but that change also reflects up here in the work coordinates. So now we have to zero it because we're back at 0. So we zero it and we're going to do the exact same thing again. I'm going to up arrow 2 times to get to the G0 A360. It went further, but still not enough. So let's go ahead and, since we still have the MDI line open here, we're going to up arrow twice to the A0. And if you screw up, you can always manually jog. If you forget to zero it out and go back to 0, you can always manually jog until that line becomes a line again. And it went way too far on that. I know exactly why, but I did that on purpose. So now I'm going to manually jog. Everything lines up. I'm gonna zero here. I'm gonna come into motor tuning, A-axis. 700 was too small, so we're gonna go 750. Save axis settings. Alright, so we changed it to 750, click Save Axis Settings, click OK. Our numbers up here changed, so we're going to 0. And X360. I typed X360. That was stupid. Alright, let me get this set back up. Alright, got it set back up, so I'm going to G0 A360. My wife popped in and had a question. That's why I had to pause the video. All right, so we can see that we're still not far enough. We're getting closer, but it's not far enough. So I'm going to A0. Alright, we're right back where we started. Config, motor tuning, A-axis 750, let's go 800. Save axis settings. Now I'm going to click reset and click it again because my A-axis was doing a little something goofy. We're going to zero the A-axis because our line is straight. So we want to start from there. A360 in the MDI line, press enter. And it just did something goofy again. So we'll see if it comes back or if I have to redo that again. Yeah, it did something goofy. So let's go ahead, and I don't know if anybody knows, but the home and the end buttons are normally the keyboard shortcuts to jog the A axis. And if you have the MDI line open, press enter, it'll close it, and then you can jog. You cannot jog with the MDI line open. So there we are. Everything's good. I'm going to 0 there. This thing's acting goofy on me. And if you ever get to a point where this thing is going this way and then back, or even this or any other axis, we've been making changes. So let's just go up here to config, save settings, close mach3, and then just reopen it. Alright, so we are setting on the line. A-axis is 0. I'm going to G0 A360. We're off to the races. And boom, there it is, right there. That's my number. And like I was saying for this, I have that on there, so if I jog to there, which I probably need to redo that, when I put a flat bar in the 4-jaw chuck, it is perfectly flat. Give or take a little bit because this is eyeballing it, but it's flat enough for the work that I do. So to recap, we put just a visual indicator. If you wanted to draw a line with a paint marker or whatever, just a visual reference. Okay, we split it so it could rotate independently, just like over here. And we basically just rotated it 360 degrees. Did it go too far or not far enough? If it went too far, our steps per number is too big. If it didn't go far enough, our steps per number is too small. So we inched up and saw it coming through. Now the big thing is to remember to go back to 0 to where this lines up, jog it there, or use the MDI line, 0 out A, make your change, 0 out A again, because the numbers will change every time you do a steps per change. And then repeat the test. Tell it to go A360. Does it go all the way around? Far enough? Or not, or too far? You just dial it in from there. Now on this one, I had the numbers here for this, but I've lost my paperwork or something because there's a mathematical value as well. But we're not going to go into that right now. So anyway, I hope this helps my client with his 5-axis machine get it dialed in. And if anybody else has issues, I hope it helps you guys out as well. And the exact same thing for the X and Y axis. Have some sort of indication, and what I like to do is take this outside radius, put it just up against the line, and when you tell it to move 25.4 in whichever axis, if you're in millimeters, that moves at 1 inch, it should come over here to this line with this radius just barely over that line, or touching, depending on how you set it up. If it doesn't move far enough for that axis, your steps per is too small. If it moves too far, your steps per is too big. It's quite literally that simple.